Three, two, here we go. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Robert Malone, the physician, biochemist, and inventor of mRNA vaccine technology, known worldwide for challenging the narratives that shaped the pandemic and for calling out the institutions that failed to protect us. You are the author of Psywar, a powerful new book exposing the psychological manipulation used during COVID-19, and a fierce advocate for restoring scientific integrity, health sovereignty, and government accountability. Your recent investigations reveal how global health policies are being shaped behind closed doors, from WHO power grabs to censorship regimes to post-vaccine safety signals that have been ignored or buried. Through your work with the MAHA movement and alliance with Bobby Kennedy, you're now fighting for a healthier, freer, and more transparent future, one where the people reclaim control from profit-driven bureaucracies and corrupt public health authorities. Robert, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks, Brian. I wish I could say it as well as you do, but I'm grateful for it in any case. It's certainly been an interesting 5 years now.
Oh my gosh, that's to say the least. Well, look, you've been on this show many, many times, twice here in London with your wife, Jill, where she's busy with the Substack while you're in here with me. Your Substack's amazing, by the way, and so just thank you for those contributions. And then recently, I was extremely excited to read that you have been appointed as part of this new vaccine advisory panel by Bobby, alongside one of our other former guests, Martin Kulldorff, who we had in the middle of all the madness when he published the Great Barrington Declaration. Of course, I texted you and you said, yeah, Brian, now when the knives are coming out. And so I'm curious, tell us about this announcement and tell me what was it like with the backlash from the media, because I saw the usual Telegraphs and BBCs here all coming. And has that now passed, and now are you able to move on? Or what has been the reaction to this announcement? And tell us about the announcement itself.
So just to set the scene, Brian, there had been talk with Bobby and others back and forth for about 3 months for how I might serve in the government. And I really did not want to take an administrative position. The idea of spending 4 years having to rent or buy a condo up in Rockville, time away from wife and farm, and frankly, spending 4 years being stabbed in the back on a daily basis by the DC in crowd was not my idea of a good time. So I was looking for some way I could serve the administration, and particularly Bobby, but also President Trump. And this two opportunities came up. One was to be what's called a special government employee, or SGE, which is what Elon Musk was, reporting to Bobby and providing advice across NIH, CDC, and FDA. And so that vetting process started and went on for 3 months. It was really kind of amazing, the amount of discussion and vetting and analysis and forms to be filled in and blah, blah, blah. And about 2/3 of the way through that, then the opportunity of possibly serving on the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices for CDC came up. Now, that's kind of inside baseball, or you might call it inside football in the UK. What the heck is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices? So this is the mouse that roared. It sits as a chartered Federal Advisory Committee. That's a special law the U.S. government has that allows people to advise key administrators within the government, particularly in the executive branch. And in our case for the ACIP, we get the glorious compensation of $250 per day as an honorarium. So obviously I'm doing this for the money. And that was sarcasm, by the way, just to say. And this committee is chartered for two things. It's kind of a special one, a little unusual for a federal advisory committee. It advises the director of the CDC, and if she is not confirmed, which is the case currently, then those advisories go up to the secretary. So recently, just to give a little example, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, while I was participating in their first meeting of this newly reconstituted group, voted to eliminate multi-dose influenza vials that have mercury-containing thimerosal. And why that's a big deal with the pharmaceutical industry and why they busted a gut over that, I have no clue. All kinds of justification, but it left corporate media arguing in favor of adding mercury to vaccines, which is pretty much a loser. And this is a hot button issue that Bobby has been focused on for decades, going back to his time with Waterkeepers, mercury in food, mercury toxicity, mercury in vaccines. It's what led him to the position at Children's Health Defense of being chairman of the board. So what ACIP does is when FDA authorizes a product, a vaccine in particular, or something for infectious disease, at the next meeting, ACIP by charter must advise the director of the CDC on how that product is to be used. In other words, are we going to recommend it for all children? Are we going to recommend it for joint decision making so that physicians and parents and their children have to discuss whether or not to use it? Are we not going to recommend it at all? Just because the FDA authorized it for marketing, the ACIP might say, no, I really don't think the data are solid enough. So that's kind of the range of options. They take a formal vote on it. It goes up to the director of the CDC, or as I said, if there's no director because it hasn't been confirmed, it goes up to Bobby. And then those recommendations are accepted. So who cares? Well, what happens is that those recommendations in part trigger a program called the Vaccines for Children Act in the United States, which purchases and distributes. So you could think of that as acquires and markets, if you're looking at it through the lens of pharmaceutical industry, vaccines to the poor, Indian health community, those that might not be insured for some reason, etc. So basically, it's a big buy that happens if the ACIP authorizes it and the CDC director concurs. Furthermore, a whole lot of nations all over the world, and I don't know, perhaps even the UK, are influenced by the decisions at the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is why I say it's the mouse that roared. It's really not that big in terms of the charter, and yet historically it has set precedent for vaccine utilization, particularly in children, all across the Western world. So I find myself on this consequent to the secretary, I'm referring to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., having made a decision that the old ACIP that was largely drawn from the medical professional societies, or what a cynic might call the guild, was the source from which most of the ACIP members were drawn, and also many of the subcommittee members, which is where the work really gets done. We're all drawn from these professional societies. And basically, you can figure out if you're going to be compensated with an, quote, honorarium of $250 a day, you got to have some other source of income. And most of these folks are academics or they're working for big hospitals, and being on the ACIP gives them punches their ticket for demonstrating that they're doing good community service and that they have international standing. So that's why they do it. But what the secretary noted was that this has over time become, I'll call it, infested with chronic conflicts of interest, financial, organizational, funding, just a whole layers and layers of different ways that both these professional societies, which have their own interests, like pediatricians, like to give vaccines because it is a major profit center for them in the United States, unlike the UK system. Okay, so, and then pharma gets its nickel, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole food chain here having to do with cash flow. And I won't use the term corruption, but let's say clear and persistent conflicts of interest of a variety of different types. And so the secretary basically decided, I've had enough of this. This has been going on for years. There's so much evidence of it going on in this present board, which, by the way, got packed at the last minute by the Biden administration. So they put a bunch of new members on as they were heading out the door. And the secretary, in an unprecedented move, just retired all of them. And then appointed 8 poor souls to stand in the breach, of which I was one, and get attacked by corporate media, academics, and the pharmaceutical industry surrogates as uninformed, anti-vaxxer people with no background. Like, for instance, say Martin Koldorf, who is the chair. I'm serve as the co-chair, according to Bobby. But Martin arguably is the top epidemiologist, we could say, in the world, former full professor of epidemiology at Harvard and author of the Great Barrington Declaration, together with others, as you noted. Also, another luminary there is Ratzif Levy. He's totally unqualified, except for the fact that he is a full professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and his specific focus is on identifying statistically risk and threat signals, particularly in vaccine products. And we have a number of others, pediatricians, there's a psychiatrist, there is a nurse who's been on many of these committees before. So there was 8 appointed. One of them couldn't pass muster. He was very seasoned. I'm sorry he couldn't join. Very seasoned clinical researcher, as I am. So it was kind of like having a compadre on the board. But he's even more successful than me in that he's got a huge stock portfolio. He's been working in industry for years, done quite well, and basically, not to put words in his mouth, but this is paraphrasing what he said to me. There's no way I'm going to work for $250 a day and have to sell all my stock. So that was a non-starter. So we're down to 7. So that's the context of what happened. And yeah, there was just a ton of hate. Hate at Bobby in particular. There's people on the committee that said, you know why we like to have Malone here? Because the press all text Malone and they leave us alone. So I'm like catnip for the likes of the Atlantic Monthly. And they recycled a lot of the same authors that had their round of punching me and hate back 4 years ago. Well, they kind of brought them back for a next round, and it got pretty absurd. The whole narrative. But frankly, Brian, one of the amazing things in all this context, my Wikipedia page still doesn't say anything about being on the ACIP and about the books or the Substack, but it's almost normal. It still says that I am a spreader of misinformation during COVID, and it cites this New York Times hit piece by Davy Alba. It was the last thing she wrote for New York Times. She was the disinformation beat reporter for the New York Times. So they still cite that, but they also, say that I've been married to my high school sweetheart my whole life, and a lot more kind of soft and squishy things, and it's a lot less full of hate. So there is some signs that I'm being politically rehabilitated. But absolutely, Bobby and I got a amazing cascade of hate mail, courtesy of both the UK and the US press. But then the committee convened, and we pretty much accepted everything that had been in the queue from the prior committee. The one thing that was new was this getting mercury out of influenza vaccines. And that didn't, the truth is, it didn't go through the standard process, so that's a complaint. But we were all well aware of the data, and we voted to that, thimerosal or mercury-containing preservative in multi-dose influenza vials amounts to a total of 3%, ooh, big number, of all the influenza vaccine doses administered in the USA. And the justification for all of the hubbub about this was that, well, the ACIP sets the standards for the world, including Africa. And so now African nations aren't going to be using multi-dose thimerosal vaccine vials, and they're not going to be sticking needles into those vials again and again. I call that a win. Furthermore, it's not the responsibility of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices to set policy for Africa. It's the responsibility of Africans to set policy for Africa, right? That's a fundamental going back to the touchstone of the Make America Great Again policies, as well as Make America Healthy Again, is to kind of turn down the volume on worrying about America as the as the policeman for the world in policy, a sensitive topic there in the UK and throughout the European Union and the West. And I think that President Trump is right on to be basically taking a position that Europe and the UK should be responsible for Europe and the UK. And the United States should mostly be responsible for the United States, still helping our friends. And that extends all the way down to our little tiny Federal Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. It's not our job to figure out how to fix the problems for vaccine administration in Africa, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So there's a long-winded answer to your very short question.
Well, I thought it was an incredible headline and just really a powerful signal that Bobby was bringing in people like you and Martin. And I like how he is just getting down to business. I wonder if you could tell me how you think Bobby has done in this first 6 months, because fortunately, unfortunately, look, the news narrative coming out of the White House is fast and high paced. And there's so much going on between the trade wars and AI and crypto and Tulsi and Hegseth and Iran that oftentimes I don't hear enough about what Bobby's doing. And combine that with the fact that legacy media is still taking pot shots at him, it's hard to know what's actually happening with Bobby. I see him wheeled up in front of committee every now and then, and I love listening to his answers because I think he's one of the best at committee. But I'm curious if you could tell us maybe, what has Bobby been able to get done so far? What's slowing him down? And maybe just as an objective view.
Well, slowing him down is an easy place to start.
Okay.
The headwinds at HHS and frankly at CDC are enormous. Every single, and it's not just us, it's not just HHS, it's Tulsi Gabbard at DNI, it's CIA, it's everything. It's what Dr. Oz is encountering in the CMS or Medicare Services program. We're if you followed the news when Elon Musk was still being a special government employee about the budgetary cuts, and in particular, the organization that has been handling a lot of, one American influencer, Mike Benz, put it this way. If it's too dirty for the CIA, they give it to USAID.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty good summary of what that's all about. So they've basically managed to eliminate USAID for the most part, which is enormous against huge headwinds. But all the other agencies, there's been a reduction in force or RIF, particularly under the DOGE program. And that has been stridently resisted, basically using lawfare. So the perhaps not so loyal opposition, if you're following the latest headlines with Barack Obama and the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, but we the opposition has decided that the district court structure in the judiciary is the pathway to try to stymie progress in the executive branch. So this mirrors the lawfare. I don't know if that's a term of art in the UK, but it certainly is in the United States, where you just put out a blizzard of lawsuits to try to stymie the opposition, to drain their energy, to suck up their financial resources, et cetera, that in various kind of even more egregious versions of that were deployed against President Trump between while President Biden was in office, to a degree that I think I still am amazed by. So that strategy is now being used together with the consequences of the existing bureaucracy being heavily biased towards the Democrat and really the left. Woke is the term of art agenda. So those people are, in their backers, are kicking and screaming. They don't want to go out the door. They're doing everything they can. They're reaching to the unions to fight the layoffs, et cetera. And if you think about it, there aren't a whole lot of options other than, the gentle term reduction in force. This is, I think, in the UK and Europe, you like to call it being made redundant. So there are many options other than that approach to try to reduce bureaucratic burden and reduce the burn rate. I mean, you're involved in the financial community.
Yeah.
If you're a CEO and the company ain't bringing in what it needs to stay afloat, and it's just gradually accumulating debt, that's not a sustainable situation, nor is it a sustainable situation for the United States government. And so Elon did a good faith effort to try to do something about it, but the people at all of these agencies, including the secretary, are surrounded by staff that may put on the smile to your face, but then turn around and stick the knife in your back as soon as they get an opportunity. And that makes it really hard. Bobby's in a position where he's not really sure who he can trust on a daily basis. That's the truth. From what I observe, I haven't asked him if that's the case, but that's what I observed. And he had some staff that seemed to have believed that it was necessary. As you know, a chief of staff is an extremely powerful position in any organization because they control the flow of information to the ultimate decision maker, whether it's the CEO or it's the secretary or it's the president. Chief of staff is a crucial position. So as are the deputy chiefs of staff in an organization. Remember, the U.S. Health and Human Services, as a division of the federal government, is the largest of all. It's bigger than the Department of Defense. It is massive.
Wow.
Bobby ended up not being president, but by God, he has got the lion's share of the grief. And he has people like Dr. Oz And Jay Bhattacharya is up against all kinds of resistance at NIH. Likewise, the appointed director of the CDC hasn't even been able to get through the Senate confirmation process. It's another place where all this stuff, so like the second, third, fourth tier appointees that have to go through congressional approval for all these agencies, including HHS, are all being slow walked.
Okay.
So he's sitting there, a bit of an island, surrounded by a small number of leadership folks to support him that have been really controlling the flow of information to him in a very significant way. And what I observe is that he's using a lot of outside channels, frankly, to gather information and make decisions. Just to illustrate, I was at CPAC a few months ago, right after Bobby was confirmed, walking up some stairs, and suddenly I get a call, Robert, in Bobby's characteristic hoarse voice. And he asked me for advice on the fly as he's about to go into a meeting for proper management of the influenza virus H5N1, the bird flu virus, at a time when there was an egg crisis in the United States, ostensibly because of the mass killing of poultry flocks in egg layer operations. Now, it turns out that wasn't really what's going on. Turns out that there was a scheme being run by some of the egg suppliers to withhold supply in order to put pressure on the administration. But there was just, the press was all in a tizzy about H5N1, and we have to kill all these birds, and they're going to kill all these ostriches up in Canada. And it was just one great big beer porn, food fight. How to phrase it. So Bobby called me and I said, well, the H5N1 is indigenous in avian flocks, wild birds, migratory waterfowl. There is no way in hell, unless you're going to do a scorched earth, kill all the birds campaign like Mao Tse-tung did with the Great Leap Forward. And that didn't turn out so well. Unless you're going to do that, you're never going to eradicate H5N1. And it doesn't make sense to be massacring all these flocks. If anything, what you need to do is direct the money to breed more influenza-resistant birds. But this mass culling is just not working. So he listened to me, went into the meeting. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, how the gears turned, but basically that became the policy. And oh, by the way, Brian, the other day I was in a subcommittee meeting with the CDC folks in the influenza branch, because I'm chair of the influenza subcommittee now. And I put the question to him, well, what about H5N1? Well, we did some great work, but yes, you're right. It all kind of just went away. So that's kind of how he's channeling. He's going to outside folks informally. Technically, that's not allowed. But so the resolution was that I ended up, I didn't know that I was going to be on the ACIP until Bobby announced it publicly. And then I started getting all these congratulations over X. So then I knew. And then I had to drop the special government employee thing, because you can't be a govy and be on the ACIP. They have all these rules. It's Byzantine. So that's kind of how it's going. Is Bobby is in the middle of a thicket of challenges. They're coming at him fast and furious. He is still, if you watch, in the guy whose boat I was just on in the Med is a very close friend of Bobby's. And Bobby was actually on that boat right before I was. That's where he took his vacation. Uh, and I was speaking to my colleague, my friend, and said, you know, I think Bobby has really grown into this job. I didn't think I would not endorse him for president. I endorsed Donald Trump.
I remember.
I thought that he didn't have the leadership experience chops to run the largest branch of the federal government. I mean, who would? Uh, um, he is a lawyer. He has been fighting against big big pharma, big ag, big chemical, the Monsanto case, pretty much ever since he had to do public service in the Hudson River Valley, consequent to being busted for heroin back when he was in school. I mean, that's what got him going with Waterkeepers, and then he's just progressed since then. He has enormous energy for somebody his age, but so does Donald Trump. The two of them are well matched, I think. And he has really grown into this job. He picks his battles. So you ask the question, what has he accomplished? To make sense of that from your side of the pond, one of the first things that the President Trump did is through an executive order, he impaneled the Make America Healthy Again Commission, which is a all of government effort to address these fundamental drivers that are frankly reducing longevity in Americans. I mean, this is the big shocker, is that our children are going to lead, if we stay on this course, our children here in America are going to lead shorter, less healthy lives than their parents.
Wow.
That's just a bomb.
Yeah.
And so the president, I am completely convinced the president is very committed, particularly to children's health. To some extent, I think this reflects Barron Trump and his sense of protection of Barron Trump and his commitment to his son and his sons. His older family has prospered, but this really young child that he, is now a late adolescent, he takes children's health very seriously. So that's one of the places he's very aligned with the secretary. So they created this MAHA commission, and after 100 days, it came out with a document the likes of which the US government has never seen before, has never produced, which was a critical assessment of where Americans' health is at and what's driving the lack of health and what's driving the various factors, particularly environmental toxins. There was a lot of teeth gnashing in the base, that the vaccine issues weren't addressed as stridently as they wished that they were, but environmental toxins and a number of other things were highlighted in that. Now, one of the things that in that initial report, which was basically a threat assessment, one of the things that was, I personally, and I was invited to the White House when they rolled this out. They did the press announcement there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm watching from the third row. There was a clear attempt to reassure the agriculture community in the United States, farmers, in part justified because, as the president said, farmers have supported me in every one of these 3 elections. So he has not only a deep attachment and commitment to children and children's health, but also to the agriculture community in the United States. And so personally, I felt like they kind of pulled their punches a little bit on big ag. And we have some agriculture practices that is forbidden in Europe are forbidden in Europe and in the UK, like the use of, here's the sanitized term, desiccants in harvesting wheat, soy, and other grains. What that amounts to is because of policies in the 60s, get bigger, get out, we largely have lost the small farm. You have these massive farms. And but even more massive is the cost of the combines, the devices that are used to harvest the grain and the soybeans. And the way the industry works is you basically have investors backing, you could think of it like a real estate investment trust, organizations that buy these very large, highly expensive bits of machinery that then schedule their harvest time so that they move from a large farm to large farm to large farm. And so the large farms have to be able to predictably dry their grain prior to the harvesters coming through because they've scheduled them. How do you do that? Well, you spray basically a pesticide on all your wheat or all your soybeans or all of your barley. And then it dies, it dries, and these big harvesters come through. The consequence is that the vast majority of Americans and Canadians, by the way, have significant levels of glyphosate in their urine. Glyphosate is Roundup. It's produced by the Bayer Corporation that bought Monsanto. And so there is this tension, just illustrated, in the Make America Healthy Again movement. Because it's a all of government response that, for instance, the Secretary of Agriculture really doesn't want to see glyphosate banned,
Right.
or atrazine or other things that are important for the margins and the productivity, because we still believe that we need to feed the world for some, we're totally blind to the fact that by pushing high carb food precursors into island nations, the poor, Africa, et cetera, what we succeed in doing is destroying indigenous agriculture, right? And substituting these low food value crap products that are, high in polysaccharides, starch. But the government is still wedded to that, and the belief that in order to maintain profit, yield, et cetera, we have to have these things. So that's just one example of kind of the tensions within the MAHA commission that exist. And but regardless, that report came out and it was the strongest statement, I think, from any government ever about toxins and the things that are impacting on public health. Now, people, the complaint is, yeah, okay, fine. So now what? Well, that's the structure is that right now, people like Callie Means, who's another special government employee, had a lot of hate thrown at him, and his sister Casey, who's appointed as Surgeon General, but yet to be confirmed. So these people are now in this next 100-day span writing the action plan. So that's the next thing you're going to see drop is the first one was the threat assessment. Now you're going to see the action plan, and then you're going to see deployment of that action plan. And by the way, the president for this commission gave as a directive to the secretary, I want to see measurable improvements in the health of Americans within 2 years because rim shot, that's the midterms.
Yeah.
So they're very focused on stuff that we can do now, like getting artificial petroleum-based dyes out of our food stream, which you guys already did.
Yeah.
Fruit Loops in the UK are a pale product in comparison to Fruit Loops in the United States because you're not having a bunch of petroleum-based dyes put into your product because you've banned them. So that's just one example. The hot button at the moment is that Bayer, which kind of got a pig in a poke when it bought Monsanto, because the, the the tsunami of uh, lawsuits for damages associated with glyphosate hadn't yet, wasn't even close to cresting when they made the purchase. And now their stock is way down. Their board is not amused,
Hmm.
and they've hired a new CEO who is committed to taking back the profitability of Bayer and Monsanto and fighting back against the narrative that glyphosate is toxic. And so they've done this, there's just an illustration of how things work in this space. What they've done is that the lobbyists working for Bayer have taken a two-pronged approach to dealing with this. They're getting state legislatures to ban any legal action having to do with pesticide liability. The U.S. The Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Department of Agriculture define glyphosate as a pesticide. You might say it's an herbicide. I say tomato, you say tomato. That's how they've defined it. And so they put in legislation, they've got it through in Georgia and one other state, that you can't sue these guys, which is very similar to the legislation, indemnification legislation that was pushed through for vaccines.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened then. And they also, in parallel, are doing the sneaky with the current budget bill, the omnibus bill that they're trying to jam through Congress, of slipping in a clause that will make it so that the EPA will lock in whatever guidance they have about toxicity, not be able to change it for pesticides, must disregard all of the scientific literature going back over a decade. Basically, they're working to get a federal indemnification bill that's retroactive so that they can shut down all these lawsuits and all these payouts and make it so that nobody can ever sue the pesticide industry and the herbicide industry again in the United States. Well, that is a directly in opposition to the agenda for Make America Healthy Again. Yet it has the benefit of being backed by one of the largest chemical companies in the world and all of their dollars, very similar to the dynamics that go on with the pharmaceutical industry in the United States and drugs, in particular vaccines. Now, that was a long-winded response to a simple question. I'm sorry. I hope to help.
No, that's super helpful. And look, we've heard about the food dyes from over here. That's something that actually cut through, a lot of the media noise. And it looked like you were getting some compliance, some voluntary phasing out of that by certain companies in America. It looked like some were pushing back. And again, they always compare over here what we've done in the UK and Europe and how surprisingly to most, we have, much cleaner food and we don't have a lot of these toxins. Funny as just a little anecdote, I took my boys to see Grandpa in San Diego, and he rolled out the Cheerios, and they refused to eat them because they said they taste different. Now, I thought they were crazy, but then I started thinking that a lot of these standards are very different in the UK and the US, and
absolutely.
I don't think there are dyes in that, but I first said you guys are crazy, and then I said maybe they're not so crazy from the mouths of babes.
So a lot of the oats are also contaminated with glyphosate, by the way, because of this
Right.
desiccant thing.
Okay.
Another key thing, Brian, that is a hot button right now is Bobby is pushing hard because as we were talking in the pre-broadcast, Americans have gotten fat. Diabetes is an epidemic. It's an epidemic in children, diabetes and pre-diabetes. And the intake of highly processed sugar is a major contributor to that. And yet the USDA historically through the food pyramid has been promoting sugar because there is a major sugar lobby.
Right.
And in particular, that it's the sugar coming from corn and sugar beets, not even from sugarcane. So Sugar is in almost everything. It was probably in those Cheerios that your kids are
Yeah.
having.
Yeah.
And it's a major contributor to this very significant health crisis that we're facing in the United States having to do with diabetes. And so you would think, because here in the States we have a Food Subsidy Act program. We call them food stamps or SNAP, special nutrition. And so one of the early things that the president and the secretary did, because they found that they couldn't outright ban the use of high sugar sodas through the SNAP program, but they could do it by getting states to do it. It has to do with states' rights in the United States. So federal government couldn't just blanket say, no, 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 no more of those high sugar Coca-Colas. But they've worked through the states. And so Bobby has really been pushing, trying to have states no longer allow the food stamp program or the special nutritional supplement to be able to be used by the poor to buy high sugar foods, particularly high sugar sodas. Well, who's going to complain about that, right? Well, you know darn well who's going to complain about that. Coca-Cola and the sugar industry, the soda industry. And so this is just to illustrate how US politics works and what's being arrayed against the secretary. What was done was that a series of the beverage industry, quote unquote, set up a series of AstroTurf organizations with very benign sounding names. So for those that aren't familiar with AstroTurf, these are fake grassroots organizations that were set up by the industry with names that make them sound like they're organic. They're springing directly from the people when in fact they're not, and capitalize these AstroTurf organizations. And they got caught with their pants down, paying conservative influencers $1,000 a tweet to write hate about this position of the secretary.
Mm.
Fortunately, that kind of got killed when it got exposed what was going on, and they had egg in their face, and that kind of got shut down. But that's the ecosystem that's going on here. And despite those headwinds, the secretary is making a lot of progress in getting mostly Republican states to take the position that we have the right, if we're providing supplemental funding, we're basically giving free food to the poor, to say, well, we can't give free crap food. We have to give them free good food. Seems like that shouldn't be very controversial. Margaret Thatcher's probably rolling over in her grave as we speak as an ex-grocer, even hearing this. But that's the state of the discussion in the United States. And that's a specific target right now. It's kind of low-hanging fruit, if you know that metaphor, for the Make America Healthy Again movement to just try to get these high sugar foods out of the federal subsidy program. And even that is just generating all kinds of grief and resistance, that somehow being able to drink sugary Coca-Cola is protected by the First Amendment in the Constitution. And just to bring it home a little bit to the CDC things we were talking about before, and an article that is on our Substack from the Midwestern Doctor talking about the chronic CDC corruption. So the CDC has set up a not-for-profit subsidiary called the Foundation for the CDC. It's congressionally approved. Normally, if you, Brian, wanted to write a check, dear Donald Trump, I want to send a check to the U.S. Treasury because I'm so concerned about the U.S. debt. Here's $500. No, whatever the number. Okay, you couldn't do that. You're not allowed to donate goodies to the U.S. government, even let alone donate something to Donald Trump. But you can't give funding to the federal government. But Congress, in its wisdom, set up these special slush funds. There's actually even one for the CIA, hard to believe. That there's one for NIH, there's one for FDA, and there's a big one for CDC, the Foundation for CDC. And the Gates Foundation, all of the major pharmaceuticals, all donate major media, major, the whole Silicon Valley internet ecosystem, Facebook, et cetera. They all make major donations to the Foundation for CDC. And the CDC can then use that as a slush fund. But the donors have the ability to kind of direct, I would really like this done with this or that done with that. So one of the big donors is, rimshot, drum roll, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, the ask was, we give you this money, we really want you to try to work on the World Health Organization to get them to lay off their guidance that they're working on having to do with sugar in sodas, which may explain why, just to bring it home and make it all about me, because of course, why not? You'll recall that I went on this little podcast with this unknown guy named Joe Rogan, and it went big. And there was a enormous amount of blowback on Spotify, which pays Joe Rogan a stupid amount of money to do these podcasts, a lot more than you and I make. And Neil Young pulled his catalog off of Spotify, so did Joni Mitchell, big kerfuffle. Well, there was a congressional investigation about what really went on with that, and they revealed that what happened was that Coca-Cola pushed on the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which was set up by the World Economic Forum, to basically represent all advertisers. This is kind of like the Trusted News Initiative that our good friends at the BBC put together.
Right.
But instead of being focused on news content, GARM is focused on advertisers. And members of GARM are not allowed to take ads or to place ads. They're not allowed to advertise on sites that are not approved. Sites such as, perhaps, I speculate, London Real, who has been countering the narrative for a number of years, and certainly things that I say, and Joe Rogan on Spotify. So basically, Coca-Cola, who's busy in bed with the CDC, is carrying water for CDC by pushing on GARM to hit Joe Rogan and tell him that you got to withdraw this podcast with this crazy guy Malone, anti-vaxxer who knows nothing about vaccines, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, we're going to withdraw all of our advertising from Spotify. That's the game that gets played right now. And it shows kind of the ecosystem, again, of what Bobby and Make America Healthy Again and the president are up against. It is huge headwinds.
I really appreciate that perspective. And I never would have thought that a company like Coca-Cola would be able to do that from all the way around. And I guess the evidence of them doing that shows that there is this massive link between, health and diet, and also
and money, profit.
Yeah,
it's
profit.
all about profit.
Yeah, and high fructose corn syrup probably rolling around in there somewhere. That's fascinating. And I appreciate you saying how every department is facing these headwinds. And with midterms coming up in 18 months, there's a lot of ways to resist. You can slow roll it, you can push back, you can attack, but what you want to do is leak. Yeah. And you want to do is make it to that 18 months where if you get a little bit of a change, obviously
yeah, it's on a knife's edge in the House.
Yeah. And then that goes with sentiment. Yeah.
Yep.
And everyone's facing that. I didn't realize that HHS was such a massive organization. And so I guess you're at this point where you could cull a bunch of people, but then there's no bodies left to do anything, right? So you have to pick the ones you can trust.
Thank you. Okay. And that again shows your organizational chops and experience. You know, probably, and I've been taught that if you're going to undergo a major corporate reorg, and this is functionally a hostile takeover. Remember that that's what's happening is a hostile takeover of a massive, massive organization and facing a huge budget deficit. Okay, what are you going to do if you're the CEO that's come in and trying to do this? Well, first thing you're going to do is call Elon Musk and say, "Hey, let's clean house." I guess that's what was using algorithms, and so there was this massive reduction in force. Really, not so massive. The one under Bill Clinton was bigger,
Okay.
but they never say that.
Right.
Uh, but what it's left is a situation, I can tell you from personal experience, where a lot of these folks, they live for a chain of command. They exist in their little niche within their little silo, and they do their little task, and they push their bit of paper up to the next person, and it's all good. And they do that for whatever their term is until they get their retirement, and then they can come back and be a consultant. So that's that ecosystem. And these people now it's like a Swiss cheese. They're not really sure who they report to, how they report to, how they're supposed to put the pieces together. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the political appointee caste that sits on top of all this thing is facing the headwinds of obstructionism and obfuscation in the confirmation process. And so everything grinds really slow. So Bobby is basically in a position where he, near as I can tell, I haven't sat down and had a good long chin wag with him, but for a long time, but he seems to be picking battles that are important, but also have significant PR component to them.
Yeah.
They're very visible. They speak to things that are kitchen table issues. And striking in those areas with a small strike team and lawyers, and then moving on to the next thing. And the criticism is that it's a little chaotic, like a lot of the Trump administration. I mean, frankly, this administration is transformational, and it actively seeks transformational leadership. And the mantra under President Trump is take action and ask for forgiveness later. It's due.
Yeah.
It's don't temporize, don't negotiate, just act, and then pick up the pieces after you've done it. And you can see that, you mentioned the trade policy, you can see that in all kinds of different ways. And that's also trickling down to HHS and Department of Defense and Tulsi Gabbard, and all the stuff that's coming out of her shop right now, and the FBI. The other day I had a week and a half ago, I had 2 FBI agents show up here at the farm, and they wanted to talk about what I'd experienced during the last 5 years in terms of the censorship, defamation, the coordinated attacks, et cetera, because they've been authorized to begin investigations about that stuff, which is I'm glad to hear it.
Wow.
And given what the bombs that Tulsi is dropping on a daily basis concerning the Russiagate hoax. Hey, remember that the Trusted News Initiative was originally set up because of Russiagate.
Right.
It was set up because of the threat of Russian election interference in the West, which we now know was a big nothing burger. But that was the original justification for setting up that operation, and which there's a lawsuit against it right now that essentially asserts that what it really is a trade organization designed to protect the interests of big corporate media.
Well, it's nice to hear that these investigations are happening and it's just not, let's move forward because, well, you and I both experienced massive amounts of censorship among other people, including the president. And it needs to be investigated and it needs to be also set straight.
I feel strongly there needs to be consequences or this is going to just continue.
Yeah, exactly.
And the words that are coming out of Tulsi's mouth about the Russiagate investigation indicate that there may well be consequences for the first time in my lifetime for political malfeasance. We'll see, because if it doesn't happen, if we don't get a sharp shock to the system, the United States is just going hell-bent for leather right down Banana Republic Road.
Yeah. No, they're strong words to hear from Tulsi. And again, I'm over here, so I'm a little separated from the States, even though I'm American. But to hear her come out like that and really go straight for, the jugular was interesting to watch. And it showed intention and also the backup with the evidence is clearly there. So that's fascinating to see. It's great to hear that, you had approached by the FBI and, we're still facing a 2-year ban on YouTube ourselves. And I read all these articles, about how Google and Facebook have now changed their ways and, Mark got rid of his fact-checking organization. But the truth is there are still hangovers from that censorship period.
Oh, it still goes on. The shadow banning, the small rooming. They've come up with other euphemisms and structures to do the same kind of stuff in a little more subtle way with a happy face on it. But that's kind of how that ecosystem is working.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, there's another achievement that probably flew underneath the radar in the UK, and corporate media hardly touched it. I think The Hill put out an article. And I get a little bit of a victory tour on this one myself. So you may recall that I went to Geneva at the time when Tedros was jamming through the international health regulations.
Yeah.
I asserted that was illegal, what was done. It didn't meet their timeline and policy and procedures, requirements, etc. It was jammed through after dinner when a number of the delegates had left. And in the United States, there was a huge uproar because it would infringe on national sovereignty and create a situation where the WHO would kind of codify and entrench all of the malfeasance that I argue, that was associated with the COVID mismanagement. And so I wrote an essay from Geneva at the time, speaking about what I'd observed, together with another US person, Reggie Littlejohn. And it kind of sat there. Well, it turns out it didn't just sit there. After the election, it made its way through the national security apparatus in the United States. And I think it was just last week or a week and a half ago, a joint decision from the president, Secretary Kennedy, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio withdrew at the last minute the United States from the World Health Organization international health regulations. And that was almost immediately followed by Giorgio Malone making the same decision from Italy, from Brothers of Italy Party. And surprisingly, that was it. It was just the United States and Giorgio Malone in Italy that withdrew, nothing but crickets from your government, or of course from the European Union, or from the various member states that we've come to think of as associating with this embryonic Make Europe Great Again movement. Only the United States and that crazy neo-fascist fan of family values in Italy. I'm referring to how the press has portrayed Giorgio Malone, who certainly is not a neo-fascist. But
no, I remember
so that's another win for Bobby.
Yeah, we spoke about that when you were here, and I think we put into pretty big detail. This was the International Health Regulations and Pandemic Treaty. This is a preparedness treaty, I think, where they would have basically just taken over sovereign control or would have had the ability to do that at the next red flag of
This
some
was
pandemic, right? It
this
was
was
a
very central to the New World Order and the Great
yeah,
Reset.
yeah. I remember we
Very
talked about
much a World Economic Forum advocated position. And as you know, the United States has already pulled out under President Trump from the World Health Organization, but this was kind of a rump action. Even though you pulled out, if you didn't um, decline the IHRs, then you'd still be bound by them, was the language. And so it was still a binding health treaty. And to great pleasure of many on my side, the president, the secretary, and the secretary of state all came together and said, basically, hell no. And so that was another win where, you got to count these because it's up against so
yeah.
much resistance.
And
These small things matter.
great to see Secretary of State Marco Rubio in that as well. And again, you talk about someone else that's fighting the headwinds. And I know he recently did a massive layoff in that State Department and pushing back, but I love listening to him, and he just is a nice breath
So,
of fresh.
Brian, what I hear from the Hill is that Secretary Rubio and Secretary Kennedy have built a close working relationship. They've become good friends.
Hmm.
This is what's happening. Yes, there's been some reorg, and there was a significant reorg that happened when Bobby came back from vacation a week ago within HHS that some within embraced. Let's say we're very glad to see that reorg happen, but it happened. But for the most part, what I'm hearing and seeing is that this group of appointees are really coming together. They're working together better and better, and I look forward to whatever headwinds. President Trump having great success with this team over the next 3.5 years.
It's been incredible to watch. And I think it was yesterday where President Trump gave a speech about the future of AI. And David Sachs, as AI and crypto czar, said it was the most important speech that a president did about technology since President Kennedy said we were going to put a man on the moon. And
They are all in. They
yeah,
are. If I like to say to people, if you want to get a federal award right now, if you're writing your grant or contract proposal, you got to work AI into that somehow.
yeah,
It is a big issue. It's identified as a big issue. It has to do with competitiveness against the CCP. It has to do with the future of American industry, revitalizing American industry. Frankly, I think they would be well served to be a little more cautious, but it is undeniable that that's a major thrust vector. I also had the pleasure of listening to Eric Trump, who, of course, has been portrayed by the press as a dullard at the recent Bitcoin conference, and also got to hear a speech from the vice president at that Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. And the vice president, I'm sorry, and Eric Trump are enormous supporters of Bitcoin.
yeah.
The Trump organization is making a major investment in Bitcoin mining. And the whole narrative about Eric Trump being a dullard is completely false. Eric Trump basically is on point for managing the building of all these properties. He is detail oriented. He is focused. He is forward looking. He's an excellent business person. Whatever you think of Don Jr. and his political atmospherics, Eric is all business. And watching Eric, listening to Eric talk about cybercurrency and Bitcoin, and watching the vice president speak about it, they are into transforming the economic system in a big way. I think this is, in part, it's a convenience because somehow there's going to have to be a cram down in the United States having to do with the national debt. I don't know how they're going to work that, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I
And
saw
I
Eric
think that this is
speak.
part of it.
I saw Eric speak in Toronto at the Consensus Conference, which is another blockchain conference, and yeah, he's impressive. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize is that for the last 70 years, you could argue the Trump family amassed maybe $1 billion plus in a real estate empire. In the last 18 months, you could argue they've already created 3 billion in their blockchain crypto Bitcoin empire. And I think it's because they see this as the future. Also, they were debanked and they see
Yes.
this as a way of fighting back against that. I mean,
Yep.
as I think Eric used to say, there was a point where you could pick up the phone and with the Trump name, get a loan from any bank in the world. And then there was a point where you pick up the phone with the Trump name and be denied a loan from every bank in the world. And so they embraced this decentralized finance concept and they've gone all in. And it's pretty incredible what they're doing in that space.
Necessity is the mother of invention,
Amen.
which
And
is
we're,
why I'm on your podcast. Basically, is in a very small way, as I was getting all of this censorship and attacks, and you also, both of us have basically turned to alt media as the option, and it's forced us. It's been a forcing function to cause us to up our game in this new media space. We probably wouldn't be here in the same way if it hadn't been for what we were subjected to.
yeah, no, very much so. And similarly to that with digital assets in the blockchain space, we went heavy into this space 4 years ago when I ran to be mayor of London and lost. And I looked into this space and I saw a tremendous ability for financial freedom. And as one of my guests, who was probably at that Bitcoin conference, his name is Dan Held, he was an early Bitcoiner. He said, Brian, freedom of speech is a luxury if you can't pay for your food and the roof over your head and your internet access. And I
Yep.
thought he had a great point. And so what we love about the digital asset space is that you can truly own something. I always tell my students, how many people have money in the bank and they all raise their hand. And I said, no, you don't. The bank has custody of your money and they'll give it back to you if they choose. Also, your fiat currency is being printed, inflated, and taxed at will. And so if you really want something that is cannot be touched by a government, well, that's where your Bitcoin comes in. So it's fascinating, Robert, how these two worlds have collided with us, where you have new media and maybe new money all kind of coming together, and it
And
all
new
makes
health.
sense. Yeah,
Yep.
very much so. And look, you're going through all your different Substack articles that I was going to bring up organically through this conversation. And by the way, we'll have the link to your Substack below. You guys still produce one a day?
Yep. Well, the truth is that occasionally we have guest writers. Thank you. We missed yesterday because I was on the plane coming back from Rome,
Okay.
and by the time I got home, I was about cooked. And but mostly we do. But Fridays and Sundays we put out the Friday Funnies and the Sunday Strip, which is kind of probably too inside American politics for most British or European, although we have a number of fans from Europe and the UK and Australia. But that's a collection of memes that are often really pretty edgy,
Yeah.
having to do with whatever the current events are, and that was the case today. So that gives us a little bit of a break from writing an essay, because these essays typically take, 4, 5, 6 hours between the concept and the research and writing and editing, etc.
Yeah, it's great work, and I love it. And I sometimes those funnies are a little inside because sometimes I'm trying to understand them, and I know it's something that's you need to know maybe closer to DC, but often not. And so it's great content. I highly recommend everyone goes and subscribes, and hopefully also contributes. Talk to me about the book, War: The Information War Behind the Pandemic. Is that something that the world is still digesting? And I'll ask
Yes.
you this question, Robert. Is it hard to remind people of these concepts when we're now 3 or 4 years past the height of that war? Or is there another war happening also right now that you can point to as evidence from your book?
Well, the tech is still deployed on a routine basis, and the 77th Brigade and the Mutton Crew have not gone away, bringing it home to your island.
Yeah, that's us.
And the I, but there are kind of cracks in the wall. The other day, I was on the boat and we were just talking about things, and there was an actor with us on the boat, and he was not hadn't really followed all that I'd encountered. So we were talking, and I mentioned Wikipedia, and so we talked a little bit more. I pull up my Wikipedia page. Lo and behold, it is far more friendly than I've ever seen it since it was first posted, and has soft, pleasant things like it mentions that I married my high school sweetheart. It still says that I was the spreader of misinformation during COVID, and it cites the Davy Alba hit piece from the New York Times. But it's got a whole lot of other content, and I was it lightened my heart to see as another example that I'm appear to be being politically rehabilitated a little bit. But the technology, what's happening in particular is that the go-to reference of Wikipedia is increasingly marginalized. And the big business threat, by the way, to Google right now is another drum roll and a rim shot, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's now the data sets and the training and the constraints that are being put on the AIs that is the new frontier for managing the approved narrative and promoting the approved narrative. So it's like all of this, it's gotten there's another level of sophistication that's being built and deployed. It's the good thing about the COVID crisis was that it was so obvious that even a physician scientist could see it, right? You didn't have to be a trained intelligence analyst to see what the heck was going on. It was pretty obvious to most of us, or a large fraction of us that weren't hypnotized by what was going on, referencing Matthias Desmet. But now it's going underground. It's a lot more subtle. The same things are being done, being promoted. I believe strongly that the pharmaceutical industry has integrated psychological warfare technology and tactics of 77th Brigade and the US Psy-War units, et cetera, as a routine part of their daily marketing.
Mm.
So that, illustration, example, case in point, the AstroTurf advocacy groups that the beverage industry created that we spoke about earlier, that then was paying the $1,000 a head, per tweet to, and this is the notable thing, to conservative influencers.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to destroy the conservative base. I'm seeing that there's also, there was a document leaked from, in the United States, we have these two big pharmaceutical industry advocacy organizations. One's called Pharma. The other one's called Bio. So Bio's domain, Pharma's domain historically has been more traditional pharmaceutical industry. Bio's domain has been the emergent biopharmaceutical industry, recombinant DNA, proteins, et cetera. And now, of course, the distinction between those is increasingly academic. But Bio held a meeting in which the notes got leaked, that they felt that Bobby Kennedy represented a major, I'll use the term, existential threat to their industry, and he had to be destroyed. Full on. And they were going to start with a war chest of $2 million. And what they were going to do is deploy these same kind of strategies and tactics through everything is about social media now. The people that I interact with on a routine basis, I had to notify HHS that I was going to have this talk with you.
Right.
and they had to agree that you looked like a friendly. That's that. And I, when I was on the boat, I got a call from the head of HHS comms saying, Robert, you posted this tweet and it criticizes one of the people within our administrative structure, and I really want you to take it down. And so I took it down. But they are carefully monitoring the information stream, particularly on Twitter, X, but also the other social media platforms. And that is the battleground now. That's increasingly the political battleground. Trump was the social media president this
Yeah.
last election, and managing that ecosystem is central to managing the Hill, Congress.
Yeah.
Because it's so effective. It's effective for fundraising. It's effective for advocacy. It's effective for resistance. You can mobilize people very rapidly. So now, Brian, I'm also, by the way, a formal medical advisor to the Make America Healthy Again, what do they call it? MAHA action. And though, if I can unscramble what that means, they're the political action committee that was set up to support RFK, first as a presidential campaign and then in the context of MAHA for the current president, has been transformed into an ongoing PAC that has two branches. This has to do with nuances of American law, federal law. One is falls under a federal statute referred to as 501c3, which can be a general purpose advocacy organization, can take money as tax deductible to support advocacy in an area like Make America Healthy Again. But it can't act politically. It has to be apolitical in its action, so bipartisan. Whereas 501c4 organizations, which have different consequences in terms of tax benefits to donors, et cetera, can be political advocacy organizations. So MAHA Action is the one that I'm now a medical advisor for, and that is a C4. So I'm affiliated with an organization that now is advancing partisan politics having to do with the Make America Healthy Again agenda. And that's kind of, that's how DC is working these days.
Okay.
It's these very large PACs that are set up, as well as these surreptitious structures like the AstroTurf organizations that is driving American politics now.
Yeah, like you said, you have to be on the social media. You have to master it. It's nice to see that HHS Comms understands you got to fight fire with fire. What I see is them trying to splinter, the MAGA movement and people inside that movement. You saw them trying to drive it through with Elon and Trump, and then with the Iran strike, you saw it splintering a little, and that's probably the best weapon that the left has right now, or any
Yes.
organization that doesn't want the MAGA agenda. And you got to watch that like a hawk. I know Trump's aware of it, but that's the best way to splinter. And then, like you said, paying for those conservative tweets, since they don't have an offense of their own.
Was huge.
Yeah.
Gaza conflict remains a major divisive structure that is actively exploited
Yeah.
by both IDF and Hamas and the opposition. When that started out, I elected not to stick my nose in the middle of it. It's not my core competency. But moreover, what I observed was that you have two of the most highly accomplished, skilled psychological warfare units in the world duking it out head to head in an environment now where it's increasingly difficult to even be able to rely on, don't believe your lying eyes. Rely on seeming video footage
Yeah.
that can be entirely synthetic. It's extremely, so you ask with Cyborg, what's happened to it? It's gone mainstream. It's become a core function of corporate policy and advocacy and marketing and strategic positioning. And it's become a lot more sophisticated and subtle, consequent to artificial intelligence. And remember, we talked about this in the Cyborg book, and I think we covered it before, surveillance capitalism, that the building through your data of a virtual avatar for you and everybody else, both as individuals and collectively as members of various categories, that's incorporating everything from the data that is being drawn from your car or your cell phone about where you are and when you are and how you drive and what you shop for and blah, 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 blah. And certainly whatever your search activities are. All that's being aggregated to generate a virtual avatar of who you are. And then that is being used as a driver. All those data are for sale. And they're being drivers for guiding the AIs to craft the information ecosystem that you're encountering. So we're moving to a situation where everything is customized in a real-time basis to advance whatever the payer's agenda is, based on your idiosyncratic personality characteristics and preferences. Incredibly powerful. So that's where it's at right now, and I'm afraid it's going to be increasingly difficult to discern what is reality. We're all going to become believers in existentialism, that reality is whatever we feel it to be, right? Especially those that are living in a virtual world, like a lot of our youth, as opposed to, this is an older essay that I wrote long ago, this tension between the physicals, the virtuals, the overlords, and the machines, I think is the new caste structure. And there still are people that live in the physical world. They have to do things like manage your electrical power, or repair your car, or a myriad of other jobs that increasingly pay very well in the United States. They're six-figure income jobs, and they go crying for people. And meanwhile, the universities are churning out, we could go down that road, but graduates with large debts that are increasingly unemployable, and they're going to be, they're being made redundant by the new technology and artificial intelligence, not the least of which is the coders, who thought they were immune to all this, but they're like the first ones getting jettisoned. And if you're in the service industry, if you're in finance and those kind of things, good luck. I would not advise any 20-something to go intern at Bears and Stern right now. I just don't think that's going to be a sustainable business model.
Although there's much worse options than that with AI as well. Law, accounting, like you said, programming, those are almost even sooner on the chopping block than financial services. But yeah, it's all a big question mark. And we are going to struggle with reality. Look, you talked about some of the recent conflicts. We were seeing video. We don't know if it's true or not. We don't know when it was shot, when it was published. And now with those AI answers, you used to search Google back in the day, and okay, your stuff would be suppressed, mine would be suppressed. But when you read something from the BBC, you started to learn that this was their game. With the AI, it spits you the answer out. There's only one answer. And there's no, okay, it came from here, these said this. There's not 8 links. There's not, it's just one answer, and that's scary, very scary, because
Yeah,
that's the
and for the
reality.
average person,
Yeah,
it comes across as a level of definitive authoritarian
yeah,
positioning that is often just assimilated, not without questioning. Oh,
yeah.
it's what the machine says, and therefore it that's the truth.
I was on a,
That's where
I was on,
the ability to discern. So that gives rise. You mentioned the splintering. We haven't talked about the splinter net, which I think is another fascinating thing that is a indirect consequence of the rise of national-based censorship policy, where we're going to have the global internet splinter into subnets that are and financial ecosystems around those that are defined by censorship policy. Uh, and so you'll have, European Union, you'll have a UK basically internet, which paradoxically opens up business opportunities in the UK if the likes of these big boys, they're kind of cumbersome. They're like the giant marshmallow guy in Ghostbusters, right? They just kind of kludging along. And a nimble velociraptor, business-wise, can come into that ecosystem, be very attuned to UK realities, and uh, address market opportunities in a much more agile fashion, in a way that recognizes what the unique constraints are of the UK. And I've been approached by one such company in the UK to work with them, and it really opened my eyes to this idea of the splinter net, in what's going to come of it. But everything is going to splinter like that.
is this kind of like what's considered the Great Firewall of China, where it's had its internet separate from the world? You're saying these are going to start popping up in the UK and the EU, and all
Not
these
going to start. It's
pockets
already happening.
are already happening, right?
Yeah. And by the way, that's the paradox is that's a business opportunity.
Okay.
If Starmer is going to play that game, and you guys are going to be subject to arbitrary and capricious censorship from the BBC board and whatever else, uh, um, you can say, well, I'm going to resist that, or you can say, well, this looks like the new reality. How do we adapt from a business sense to that structure? And one way is to build capabilities, particularly relating to information, that recognizes this new reality and finds ways to profit and build capabilities that bring value to British customers within those constraints.
Hmm. It's going to be a very interesting world these next couple of years. And like you said, what they said, necessity is the mother of invention. We've thrived in our own independent media platforms because we had to create them to get our messages out. But now these are going to be challenged, and there's going to be new ecosystems in the future. And a lot of us are trying to get back into mainstream media to set the record straight. But of course, that could be futile, as the
It's a
future is.
fool's errand.
Yeah, it's a new media.
Don't even, my wife calls them dead media. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. And the recent firing of Stephen Colbert is just one example, but their business model is crashing. Just don't. My advice is let them die. Don't fight that battle. You don't want to get into their ecosystem. You don't want to, recreate in some better way what their failing business model is. No, no, no. Just bypass them. Just go around, be a velociraptor, not a giant marshmallow man.
And so for
And
you, Substack has been a great way to
yeah,
get your views out there. Independent media still for you, and Twitter.
yeah. And I'm being approached by sponsors. So I'm on the cusp of whether or not I put little tags at the bottom, little ads. Basically, what if you think about that, for those advertisers that wish to reach the types of viewership that I'm reaching or you're reaching, you represent a specialized opportunity to hit a target audience, like audiences that are open to using cybercurrency, is just one example.
Yeah.
And so if you are a cutting edge new cyber or gold investment tool company, are you going to go to the GARM players? Are you going to go to Google AdSense and spend your nickel going through their filters? No, that's not the audience you want to target. So I think that what we're seeing, what I'm seeing is as there is increasing awareness business-wise and politically of the power of alt media and social media, there's the emergence of new ecosystems that we have long been crying out for, the censored, that are seeking us out. I see a very encouraging future for those who have the acumen and agility to adapt to these changing environments and be, bluntly realistic about what they are and what they aren't. But this introduces another thread, the kind of credibility economy that in a world in which so much information is coming at us and so much of it is synthetic and processed and pre-chewed, viewers will often identify trusted sources. Our audience may be splintered compared to back in the day when BBC ran everything, or NBC, ABC, and CBS here in the United States. But those are still significant markets, and we have tools and technologies that allow us to produce content at a fraction of the price of what it used to cost. And so we can access those markets. Jill and I, with one major assistant, put out our Substack, and we're hitting numbers that are at or sometimes exceeding those of cable's news network in terms of viewership, at a tiny, tiny fraction of the overhead. And so we can be sustained with only 14,000 subscribers. We have 350,000 total, but only 14,000 are paid. They're volunteers. So basically I have a decentralized subscriber base. So if I piss off some subscriber and they tell me to go jump in a lake or whatever, and they're no longer going to drop $5 a month, that's okay. They leave, others come, it's okay. And it gives an unprecedented amount of freedom.
Yeah.
To not be beholden to a small number of revenue streams, to have a decentralized support base.
Yeah. No, that's been a fantastic tool for you and so many people. Look, the one issue that still remains, in my opinion, is that YouTube has a monopoly on video, and it still
YouTube is for it.
It's the second largest search engine in the world, owned by the largest. And unfortunately, they are still censoring people. We've been deplatformed.
Antitrust activity is being considered in the United States, and that is, in an ecosystem in which the president has been on the receiving end of this.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing is a great openness on many fronts to consider these kinds of issues. And the big issue is, like we said earlier on, what happens in the midterm, and is the vice president going to become the next president? Is Bobby going to get the bit in his teeth and decide he wants to be president? Up till now, he's been saying no. Or are we going to have a resurgence of the left in the United States politically? Right now, the just like reform seems to be roaring in the UK from everything I see. And this recent speech by, was it Winston Churchill's nephew or something, kind of the inheritor of his title and estate, is now endorsing reform. Right now in our world here on our side of the pond, the favorability for the Democrat Party is lower than it's ever been. Can they come back from that? They seem to just be caught in a loop of more of the same. So time will tell.
Yeah. It's fascinating to watch reform here. It reminds me a little bit about the MAGA movement inside the Republican Party. But it's a force to be reckoned with here, and people are just tired of the status quo, and they're tired of the two-party system that's really one-party system. And
well, coming up in, I think it's September, I'm going to be in, I think it's Brussels, at the European Union, in a European Union sponsored, the EU is funny. They will allow fringe groups to sponsor various things. And upcoming is the Make Europe Healthy Again conference that I am grateful that they've selected me as a keynote for. So that's the next thing on the agenda for me traveling back on the other side. Maybe I'll have a chance to stop in London and say hi if Keir Starmer isn't going to retaliate if I say something disallowed. But it's interesting, the Make Europe Great Again movement made some progress, but then lost in Romania. The backlash in Germany is huge. But Poland, I mean, that's another thing that I hear that is just, amazing to watch, is the resurgence of the Polish economy simultaneous to the collapse of the German economy. Who would have predicted that?
It's interesting to see some of these pockets like Poland who are just kind of not having it and really embracing their own conservatism, and to see how far they can move with that. And I've been to Germany recently, but everyone said it's the worst of the wokest that you've ever experienced.
Yeah,
Is there?
they've strangled themselves. One of the things that surprised me heading up along the eastern shore of Italy from Gallipoli is I hardly saw a single windmill. Very surprising.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, so maybe I think it's important to we are winning. To count our blessings, count our wins, count Bobby's wins, count Trump's wins. I don't know where you come down, but maybe even count Nigel's wins. I consider him a friend, and I'm glad to see him prospering. I hear all kinds of nattering nabob negativity about him, but it seems like the UK is from my side, it seems like there is some political movement away from the stalemate and the globalist agenda in the UK. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I am optimistic. I think it's Reagan's it's a new day in America kind of messaging. We do not win by getting down and licking our wounds and complaining and becoming, self-imposed victims and all of this. That's why I don't like to talk about all the crap that I've been subjected to, is frankly, yeah, I took a lot of hits. I'm a better person for it. I'm a different person now than I was 5 years ago in a good way. I'm prospering by adopting new strategies, and strangely, I seem to be being politically rehabilitated. Who would have thought that? Uh, and um, and it's okay, you know.
Yeah, great observations, Robert. I agree. We are winning. I mean, just compared to where we were in 22 when you first came to the studio, or 23. I mean, how the tides have changed, and we are winning, and things are changing, and we're better people for it. Not a day goes by, Robert, where someone doesn't message me or stop me on the street and thank me for what we did in 20 and 21. So I always remember that. And even though there's some bumps in the road, I'm confident we'll have our channel back on YouTube this year, and I'm confident we'll just keep going forward. There'll be new challenges, but thank God we got people like you, Robert, that are constantly showing us what to look out for. I really appreciate the book War. It's something we talked about on this show years before you actually completed the book. And again, coming from a guy from the medical profession, I thought it hit even harder that you were piecing all of this together. What's a good way for people to get a copy of the book, and how can they sign up for the Substack? What's the best way, and follow you on X as well?
So Substack is the easy answer. It's Malone.news now. We've had to change the title. We don't have Substack in there. The old "Who is Robert Malone" just seems so back then. So now it's Malone.news, and it's easy to sign up, and you don't have to pay. If you do, God bless you. Thank you very much. But most important is getting the information, the content out. The book, by the way, I now have some, there's new versions in French and Norwegian, I believe,
Mm.
both for Lies My Government Told Me and for War. The War book is almost finished being translated and ready to go to the publisher in Italian for my Italian friends. And generally speaking, of course, all books these days, it all comes down to the great aggregator in the sky, Jeff Bezos, and Amazon. But there might be some obscure booksellers in downtown London, back alleys that may sell it. I have no idea.
And what's next for you? I know you spent a lot of time on the farm with the ostrich. Is it ostriches you have?
We have an emu. Yes, we
Emu.
have an emu. The emu is a character, but it's mainly about the horses. And we're increasingly turning to our stallion string. We've been breeding for almost 40 years now,
Wow.
and 20 years of Lusitanos, and we finally got to where we wanted to. So we're selling off our mares. We're building a huge Olympic-sized covered arena. So that's a major construction project. I actually had to take out an agricultural loan. I hate taking out loans, but we did it. It's kind of a bucket list item for my wife. So that's the big thing going on here. But this volunteer government service called the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices seems to suck up an awful lot of bandwidth. So there's that. And then I'll admit, first time on any media, Brian, I'll own up. I have developed a fascination with old Porsches. And I have two 996s that are tweaked and high power, and I'm having a lot of fun bringing those back to life, and just using them for going back and forth to the airport and to DC and whatnot. It's you get past 65 and you want to do something for yourself, and that's been something that I decided to let the reins out a little bit. And when Jill and I, my wife of ever since, we've been together since I think she was 15, and she's now in Wikipedia as my long-standing childhood sweetheart. We've always been about the horses, but back when we were kids, with our young romance, my dad had if you know Porsches, a 356 coupe, 1600 Super 1958. And so that was part of our origin story. So for me, this is a little bit like, I think many folks, when they get to my age, they want to somehow recreate, maybe in the UK, it's old Triumphs. But for me, it's these old historic Porsches. So that's the new passion.
I love it. Well, good for you. Robert, thanks again for what you do. Thank you for the update with MAHA. Send all of our positive energy to Bobby and Jay, who's been on the show, and Martin and all of your colleagues, and sending you tons of power. Yeah, come see us if you're dropping through London, please.
Let's make a date for when I scoot over to Woke Central in Belgium and stop by and have a good chinwag.
Okay, fantastic. Let's do that. Malone.news for the Substack, Cywar the book, and follow this man on X. Thank you, Robert. Until next time. Bye.
I feel blessed. I'm so happy to be part of that amazing journey.
I'm glad I decided to pull the trigger and join.
You can literally come into this place with zero knowledge of investing and then learn how to find deals.
In the investment club, we get these offers on a daily basis. We get the next papers on our table.
Don't sit around. Don't let this play out in front of you. Jump on the London Real Ventures website.
We are interacting with amazing visionaries who are setting up those cutting edge technologies.
This has been an interesting ride, and I cannot wait for you to be a part of the investment club. Hope to see you on the inside.
If you haven't jumped on a free masterclass, do it. The best investment you can make is in yourself.
Please join us. You're welcome and you won't regret it.